I wasn't expecting to make this video today, because usually Bushiroad doesn't reveal anything on Saturday. But when they do, they reveal some major stuff, as Gear Chronicle finally gets his waifu archetype.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got another video all dedicated to the V-Clan collection pre-reveals, as Bushiroad revealed yet 4 more clans for the upcoming V-Clan collection Volume 3 and Volume 4. And within these 4 clan reveals, we got a couple of surprising cards, as not only do we see a brand new spin on a new Bermuda Triangle unit, but we also see the birth of a brand new archetype within Gear Chronicle. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into these cards and see what these new cards bring to their respective clans and what new reverse units we have to discuss. So first off, we got the reveals for Bermuda Triangle, and for Bermuda Triangle we've got these girls. But take a look at the unit on the right with the guitar. This is Reverse, and if that name sounds familiar, that's the same grade 3 unit that we got in the previous V-Clan collection that didn't attack. So we have a new version of that particular grade 3, and interesting enough, her extra name is Rock, which might be the Bermuda Triangle version of Reverse, as their Rock, the R, but that's just pure speculation on what this can actually mean. But let's take a look at what the skills description actually tells us about these cards. So first off, we've got the grade 1, which is Glittering Soul Nikita, and Nikita, the skill description reads as: pay a lot of soul for a power-up, leave it to her on your opponent's turn 2. So I think this is going to be very simple. It's soul blast for power, but that on your opponent's turn 2, that can either mean that the power maybe stays on your opponent's turn, or maybe she can do something on your opponent's turn if you pay the soul. This can mean anything. I think it's probably going to be more in the vein of that the power stays, so it's harder to remove. But we have to wait and see what that actually will entice. Now if we move up to the grade 2, we've got Demiurge Genius Celia, and Celia's skill description reads as: when you have something you're looking for, she might come in handy. So I think this is going to be a tutor for the clan or for the deck, for the archetype, whatever. This is probably going to be a searcher. Now, the question is it going to be a searcher for a specific grade and then checks the top X cards? Or is it going to be similar to what we saw with the Highlander support grade 3 that allows you to call a name and then dig through your deck until you revealed set card? We have to wait and see how this is going to work out, but another consistency engine can be nice for Bermuda Triangle in general, and definitely also for the Highlander archetype. And then finally we've got, of course, the new grade 3, which is Explosive Diva Reverate Rock, and her skill description reads as: although she longed for the brilliant stage of the idols she admired, she couldn't shine because of her own withdrawal, but she's changed since then. Light shines on the main stage, and now she's going to play the leading role. This tells us absolutely nothing. And this is the same case as when she was originally revealed, because her description back then also basically told us absolutely nothing what she can do. But this is the reason why people are speculating that this is the Bermuda version of Reverse, because her original version was too shy, and that's why she didn't attack as a Vanguard unit, and she let basically everyone else do it for her because she was insecure. But in this case, she's now changed, and now she's going to take the leading role, so her personality reversed. So we have to wait and see what this is going to mean. It will probably mean that she now will attack, but now the question is, will this interact with the previous version, and how will this interact with the previous version? That's all just pure speculation from this point onwards. Now moving on to the second clan, we've got the reveal for Nectar, and for Nectar we knew that we were going to get Cecilia Reverse, but now we see also the other 2 support cards, for which one is going to be a supporting musketeer, and we also got a generic card for Nectar that might help Asha or maybe some other plan token strategies. Because first off, we've got the grade 2 musketeer, which is Cherry Blossom Musketeer Augusto, and Augusto's effect is: a unit that's excellent as an attacker or a guardian. This is probably going to be a generic attacker that gains a little bit power and gains a little bit of shield, either just continuously or if it's placed or moved or whatever. We have seen these skills time and time again. And then we also have the skill description, you can draw by returning a musketeer from drop to deck. Now that's actually going to be very handy because we know the musketeer is all about superior calling and going fast through the deck. So having a card that allows us to reload the deck is going to be very important to allow the deck to have enough ammunition to basically survive into late game and still win even if game goes a bit longer than they are comfortable with. So this is a nice addition for that archetype. Then for the other supporting grade 3 that we got Deep Green Lord Master Wisteria, and its skill description reads as, call a plant token and add a card with the same name as a rearguard to hand. So this is similar to the playstyle where you want to have multiple copies of the same card on the field. In this case you copy them, grab them to your hand, and then you can call them to the field basically. This can interact with the Asha token because if I remember correctly, it will have the same name as your Vanguard, as the Asha it copies. So you could copy the token, which has the same name as your Vanguard, and then you can fetch the Vanguard from your deck, which filters for grade 3, and at the same time next turn you can write it to get more force markers if you want to go that route. So this is something that can interact with that. But also has the effect, when he attacks, there is a skill to power up units with the same name. Again, similar to maybe works with the Asha plant token, maybe it will work with something else. This is what we've seen in the past with Nectar with multi-name effect, but we have to wait and see how this is going to work. And then finally we got Cecilia, which is formed White Lily Musketeer Cecilia Reverse. And Cecilia Reverse has a skill description, a reverse unit that works on both Vanguard and Rearguard. Now that's important because currently she's the only reverse unit that specifies this. So it's very likely that all the other reverse units are mainly Vanguards, but this then probably will have a skill that is Vanguard Rearguard Circle, which is going to be very important. And then followed up, repeated attacks are possible by calling Cecilia from deck. Also, by locking your front row rear guards. Now this is interesting because this probably means that maybe on attack she can call a Cecilia from deck, which I assume can be the old Cecilia or herself. There was Cecilia Reverse, as they don't specify specifically what type of Cecilia. So this can be interesting to extend the multi-text. But then there's also the by locking your front row rear guards, which either means you need to lock a front or rear guard to acquire the multi-tech, or you do something else by locking your front or rear guards, which then begs the question, what does this mean and how will this interact with the rest of the deck? Because keep in mind, Nectar is a force deck, so locking your front or rear guards means you're limiting the amount of attacks you can dish out. But if it's during the battle phase, you can lock a rested unit. So we have to wait and see how this is going to pan out. It's interesting because this means we have more multi-task shenanigans within Musketeers, which can make Musketeers even more devastating. So this is going to be very interesting. Now moving on to the surprising reveals of today, we've got Aquaphors, which of course had Maelstrom Reverse, but we also got some more support cards which are going to be very interesting because they showcase a new playstyle or a change in the playstyle of Maelstrom. Because we already had the recent playstyle with the original Maelstrom, then we had the Guard Restrict playstyle with Glory Maelstrom, and then with the support that came afterwards, we had this whole thing that allows you to still activate on hit effects when they don't hit. But now we get a little bit of a different approach because we have these new cards, which we can see with Tier Knight Valeria, and her skill description reads as, powers up the 4th attack or more, which is typically the amount of attacks you're gonna hit in Maelstrom. Then if its attack hits, activate a skill. Force your opponent to guard. Now this is going to be interesting because it doesn't specify that she needs to be the 4th attack or more, and it seems that Maelstrom can restand on the 3rd or 4th battle. It can maybe mean that this can also empower your Maelstrom that's going to swing for the 2nd time, which can be interesting. But then it also has an on-hit effect, which we can forcefully activate, which then still says, force your opponents to guard. So you can attack with a unit, your opponent is going to guard the attack, but because you force on-hit effects to still activate, then maybe you force them to guard again or something, like that your opponent is still losing the amount of shield from hand that's equivalent to the amount of attack power that the attack had. I don't know what this actually means, but this could be very interesting depending on how it's gonna work out. But then if we go to the next card, we got a new grade 3 support card in the likes of Cobalt Wave Dragon, and it has a skill description, powers up every time your rearguard attacks. Now that can be interesting because that means this thing can be a beefy boy, and if we combine that maybe with Tetra Drive or something else that can dish out a lot of multi-text, this could be a very powerful rearguard, maybe Vanguard, depending on what the skill is going to be. But it also has the skill, even after a strong attack, switch the front and back row to conduct a continuous attack. So this is what we see on other cards where you can swap your columns, which basically promote more multi-attack, which then also will play into his other skill. So this can be a nice support card or maybe a boss unit for a different deck, depending on if this is going to be a Vanguard unit or a Rearguard unit. We have to wait and see how these skills are going to be worded on the card itself. And then for Maelstrom Reverse, we of course got Blue Storm Karma Dragon Maelstrom Reverse, and its skill description reads as, and this is going to be interesting: power up by locking allies every time your opponent guards. So every time they guard your attack, you can lock your rear guards, which basically means you attack with a unit, it's guarded, you lock that unit. Or if you can swap them, you first swap them and then you'll lock the unit that's in the back row. I think that's somewhat of the playstyle this is going to work towards. But then also, if the opponents guard your Vanguard's attack while you have a lock card, ... resistance is futile. Make a choice, sacrifice yourself or your friends. This is interesting because this basically means that your opponent guarding effectively plays into your playstyle, as you're going to do things while they're guarding, which is nice because that means the longer the game progresses, the dangerous this deck is going to be, because once they're at 5 damage, they're forced to guard anyways, and that will make these cards even more powerful. And because we have on hit effects, and we have those cards that still allow us to activate those hit effects, you get best of both worlds. You force your opponent to guard, which then means these skills will activate, but at the same time, you're still hitting, which then activates all the other cards. So this could be a very obnoxious playstyle, which can make this new Maelstrom deck very annoying to deal with, and potentially very powerful. So I'm very excited to see these skills in action, and to see what Maelstrom Reverse has in store for us. But then finally, we get to the big bang of today's reveals, as we've got the card reveals for Gear Chronicle. And this is a surprising one, because we didn't get Chronojet Reverse, we didn't get Chronofang Reverse, we didn't get Demiurge, we didn't get ZTB, we got Steam Maidens. And this is something I've been advocating for a long while. I wanted to have a Steam Maiden archetype for probably longer than the V-Series even existed. And we finally are getting it, because not only are these all for Steam Maidens, they actually interact with each other and they actually work with Steam Maiden. So we now officially have a Steam Maiden archetype, which can be interesting in V, but might also have some premium application, because surprisingly enough, if we're gonna look at the skills, they are actually Timeleap cards. But not in the sense that you're guessing that they're going to work. Because first off, we've got the Grade 1, which is Steam Maiden Iluru, and her skill description reads as, bind a Grade 2 from your hand to draw a card. So this is just a cycle. This is very similar to what we saw with Mystery Flare and Lost Legend, so this could actually also be support card for the Mystery Flare. That's kind of interesting. But it also has a skill, after attacking to swap with a Grade 2 from your bind zone. So her first ability plays immediately in her second ability, which then allows you to multi-attack. A rearguard that has built-in multi-attack, which is kind of interesting, and it works with a Grade 2 from the bind zone, which then also that's synergized with Premium Timeleap, which basically Timeleaps a Grade 2, and then you can grab that Grade 2 that's in the bind zone, basically combo it off with this Grade 1. These are some interesting combinations that might come up, and I'm very curious of how this is actually going to work out. Then moving up to the Grade 2, we've got Steam Maiden Aluru, and her skill description reads as, bind a card from drop, and for each grade of that card, power up. So this is basically, again, something similar that we saw with Mystery Flare, and this can again work very well with Mystery Flare, and you probably want to bind the Grade 3 or Grade 4, depending on how much power you're going to gain. I think this is going to be like plus 3k, but could be plus 5k per grade. We have to wait and see what it's going to be. Could be a nice beefy attacker. But then also she has a skill after attacking to swap with a Grade 3 from your bind zone. So the Grade 1 can swap with a Grade 2, and then the Grade 2 can swap with a Grade 3. So if we can bind this Grade 2 from the Grade 1's ability, we can go from the Grade 1 into this Grade 2, and this Grade 2 can then immediately go into the potentially Grade 3. And if her bind from drop is an on-place effect, we can immediately, when we multi-attack, bind another card and keep going. This all depends on what the restrictions are, and what type of costs are attached to these skills. But this already can combo in itself, which is actually kind of interesting, because this is basically Timeleap. We go from Grade 1 into Grade 2 into Grade 3. And so far, it doesn't specify any archetype restriction, so it doesn't specifically have to work with Steam Maidens, but we have to wait and see until we get the actual skills. But those are the rearguard units. Let's take a look at the actual new boss unit and see what the Steam Maiden archetypes has in store for us in the grander picture of everything. So here we have Steam Maiden Elulu, and Elulu has the skill description. At the end of the battle, your Steam Maiden attacked. So here we see the Steam Maiden archetype coming into play. Swap that unit with a unit from your bind zone with grade +1. So this is interesting because this effectively gives the effect that we saw in the grade 1 and the grade 2 to any Steam Maiden. So any Steam Maiden at the end of the battle can swap with a unit that's +1 grade. And if we swap that with a Steam Maiden, that then can potentially combo into this skill further if it's not a once per turn. We have to wait and see if it's a once per turn or not. If it's similar to Beatrice, and it's not a once per turn, you can keep attacking in some insane combo potential, which it can be very interesting depending on how this is going to pan out. And in Premium, there might be some very interesting shenanigan plays, because we also have things like Melon that can come into play, which then can potentially combo off this as well. And people are also speculating that maybe V-Melon can work with this, and yes, that might be possible, but I'm skeptical if V-Melon with the whole upstream shenanigans is actually good enough to make it, but we have to wait and see till we get the actual complete skills to make sense of this. But then also she has another ability, but then she also has the description: connect the attack of the grade 0 Steam Maiden Uluru, so the vanilla heal, with the attack of Iluru and Alaru. So this is interesting because this can either mean that it is basically an extra description of what the first ability means, or maybe she does even more with Uluru. Now, we can basically assume that because we can time leap into a grade +1 with every Steam Maiden we attack, we can call the heal trigger. So this is grade 0, she attacks, then she turns into the grade 1, that attack, that can turn into the grade 2, that attack, and can turn into a grade 3, maybe this one, that attacks, and maybe can turn into a grade 4, because we can still time leap in a non-Steam Maiden unit from the bind zone, which then can still make more attacks. And depending on how the skills are worded for the grade 1 and the grade 2, Iluru and Alaru, they themselves can also turn into another attack. So that it's possible that they themselves can turn into an extra attack, but then this card will also synergize and allows you to call another unit. So you can turn one attack into 2 units. It depends on how these skills are going to work out. This could actually be kind of crazy, because this is Beatrice levels of multi-attack, but then in a force deck that can accelerate force markers, which means those numbers can actually stack up, so you're not restricted to something like a Skull Dragon to make numbers. In this case, anything can make a number as long as you can call a card to the field, which is going to be very interesting. I'm very curious how this is going to pan out. I hope her skill is not once per turn, so we can chain, and I hope the costs are not too ridiculous, because keep in mind, even though that might sound crazy, we are dropping everything that Gear Chronicles access to. We are losing the Chronojet engine, we're losing all the staples, we're probably losing most of our strides, because I don't assume that this thing is going to stride. Maybe we can use the Engilsa, which is also Steam Maiden, which has this stride ability, to maybe set up for her, but we have to wait and see until we get the skills to actually start building the deck. There are some interesting Steam Maidens that we have access to, like Ribble, for example. If we're going to discard, maybe it can synergize with Ribble. We have to wait and see. There are a lot of options, a lot of possibilities, but I'm very curious, I'm very excited to see this in action, and hopefully Steam Maiden Archetypes is going to be something legit. Either in V or in Premium, I'm very excited for this stuff and I cannot wait. And who knows? As soon as we now got a waifu card, and most of the reverse units are females, maybe she's going to get a reverse unit in Volume 5 and 6. I wouldn't be disappointed, because Steam Maidens probably need a bit more support, and her in the reverse artwork might not be all too bad. But that's basically all the reveals that we got today. I'm very curious of what Gear Chronicles is going to bring to the table, and of course Maelstrom is looking very spicy. I'm also very excited for that one as a Maelstrom fanboy, and the reveals that we got for Bermuda Triangle are pretty interesting for what Referate is going to bring to the table, and then also Cecilia Reverse being the only or potential only reverse unit also works as a rearguard unit, means we have a lot of interesting things on the table. I'm very curious how these skills are going to work out, and I cannot wait till we get the actual skill reveals, but sadly we probably have to wait at least a month or 2 before that's going to happen. But in the meantime, we can dream at all the possibilities what these cards can bring to the table. That said, I'm very curious what you guys think of these cards, so let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below, as there's a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting stuff. I cannot wait until we get these Steam Maidens, as I've been waiting for this for years and years, and now we finally got Steam Maidens, which are basically Timeleap cards, which is effectively the best thing I could hope for. Hopefully they're gonna be good, and at the very least, they will probably look very interesting to play. As always, this video has been brought to you by lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Timeleap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!